Welcome to Hopeful Voices, a podcast by Hopeful Horizons, which is a children's advocacy, domestic violence, and sexual assault victim services organization in the South Carolina Lowcountry. Hopeful Horizons is dedicated to assisting victims and survivors on their journey of healing and to creating safer, healthier communities. Join us as we explore stories of resilience, empowerment, and our work to end violence in the Lowcountry. Hello, and welcome to the Hopeful Horizons podcast. I'm James Morale, the Director of Prevention and Outreach here at Hopeful Horizons, and I'm excited to be your host on this journey. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Hopeful Horizons is a children's advocacy, domestic violence, and rape crisis center serving Beaufort, Allendale, Colleton, Hampton, and Jasper counties. Our mission is clear: to protect, treat, and prevent. We work to create safer communities by changing the culture of violence and offering a path to healing. In this podcast, we'll be diving into various ways we support our community, from our evidence-based practices and prevention efforts to our outreach, education, and advocacy programs. We're here to provide safety, hope, and healing to survivors of child abuse, domestic violence, and sexual violence. In each episode, we'll shine a light on the incredible work being done by our staff, share powerful stories from our clients, and explore how we're making a lasting impact in the lives of those who need it the most. On this episode, we're joined by three incredible team members of ours: Raven Fields, Hope Bird, and Princess Israel. These talented women serve as violence prevention specialists here at Hopeful Horizons, and their work is truly making a difference in our community. Their primary role is to change the culture of violence, focusing on work with youth in middle and high schools. They implement prevention clubs, give presentations, and lead discussions on topics like challenging societal norms around violence, bystander intervention, and much more. Today, we're focusing on one of the most important aspects of their work: educating youth about healthy versus unhealthy relationships. Since February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, we wanted to take the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation about this critical issue. We'll talk about how we can raise awareness, support young people, and take action in our community to address teen dating violence awareness. So let's get started and hear from Raven, Hope, and Princess about the important work they're doing to empower and protect the next generation. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
All right. So to each of you, I'd like to know what drew you to working with Hopeful Horizons, and more particularly, to the position that you have working primarily with youth. Raven, we'll start with you.
Okay, yeah. So for me, it's been 5 years this month, actually, and my reason is still the same. I did this work and I joined this agency and decided to take on this role because the youth in our community is very important to me. I feel like a lot of times people don't understand the small things that they do to contribute to the culture of violence, and I just want to be that voice to help teens find their voice and understand how small things they do every day make an impact. So that's my reasoning for being here. Hope. What do you think?
Well, I was drew to Hopeful Horizons when I saw the word hopeful. It has my name in it. But anyway, so when it comes to working with youth, I'm a mom. So I think that was the number one thing that drew me to the youth component of our job. And then just wanting to prevent violence in my own community. I see how violent it has become. And I was very concerned. And as a helping professional, I just wanted to, try something new and different. And working with kids was very different for me. But of course, I'm a mother and I have children. So my reason is still the same. And it's been 1 year and about 4 months for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm loving being a violence prevention specialist. What about you, Princess?
Well, initially, I started working with Hopeful Horizons. I was starting working with them about a couple of years back, and then I left.
Mm-hmm.
So my role then and now is completely different. So I loved Hopeful Horizons so much because of working with the domestic violence and that part of the shelter that I seen. I wanted to come back because I really enjoyed what the agency stood for. I enjoyed the help and the resources that the agency provide
Right.
for the community. There's not another agency out here where we live at. That's like Hope for Horizons. Then I seen that there was a violence prevention specialist position opened, and I liked the fact that we were able to work with youth and influence youth. Not only the youth, but also adults as well. I mean, there's adults that are going through some of the same dating violence that we're talking about for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So I have a teenager like myself as well. So every time we talk about something, I learn something new here, I'm like, I go tell my son, did you hear about Aaron's Law, Gavin's Law? Like, it's definitely something that's dear to me because I have a teenager that's growing up in this time, and just bringing awareness to certain things that I may not have been aware, or some adults may not have aware, has definitely touched my heart in many different ways. And I'm happy to be back.
All right, thank you for that. All great reasons, right, to join this mission and what we do. So, as we focus on Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, what does that mean to any of you, and why do you think it's important?
I think it's important. When I first started and I learned about Love is Respect's campaign for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, I was so excited to jump on board because I really love how it stands for amplifying the voice of teenagers. I think it's important because a lot of people in our community, a lot of the parents, just we see firsthand working from our teenagers, they ask us questions like, well, how do I talk to my mom about this? Or how do I ask this question without it seeming as though I'm guilty of something? A lot of teens are searching for information and they're finding it in the wrong places. So for me, it's important for all of us to just be a part of something bigger for them, spreading the awareness, making sure they understand what violence is all about. Because another thing is a lot of people, Princess, you touched to how our information helps the adult population as well. But like in just doing the work for Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, understanding how many adults struggle with identifying red flags and things like that. So in my mind, if a lot of the adults are struggling with this information, and for me personally, I wish that I had someone like us coming in my school telling me a lot of these things. And so it's very important for me. It's important that the teens get to use their voice and speak up and share about what's really happening in their relationships. And it's important that the parents are actually open, in the community is actually opening to listening and hearing them out, because their relationships are serious. They do try to commit suicide. They do self-harm. They do harm other people. And a lot of this is normalized. So it's very important for me that we spread the awareness not only in February, but this is something that we're talking about all year long.
Just piggybacking off of you, Raven, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month is just important because unhealthy teenagers become unhealthy adults. And we always say in conversation, I wish I had this knowledge. I wish I had this knowledge back then. I think it is so important that we're able to spread awareness and knowledge about something that I don't feel like many adults or teenagers or really anyone knows about. I had never heard about Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month before I had this job. And so I feel that just the importance of spreading awareness. I talk to my boys in Men of Strength Club all the time about what awareness means, to make known, to become known. Princess, but I feel that with Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, we talk a lot and get into all of the forms of abuse, and why it's so normalized. And I think just a lot of times just spreading healthy conversation, it gets teenagers to really think. They don't really stop and think. So it's one of those things where we're coming in with the colors, we're coming in with what it means, we talk about abuse, and now they're able to have those conversations spread like wildfire.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just kind of piggybacking off of Raven as well as Hope. Teen dating violence is a significant issue. Just kind of like what you were saying, Hope. Like I believe you said this. I growing up when in my school, we didn't have people like us, so I was unaware of, as a teenager, of certain red flags to look for. And like you said, unhealthy teenagers become unhealthy adults. So growing up, I became oblivious even in my adult years. So just in a nutshell, I think it's very important to bring awareness because we are fostering healthy habits in our community just by spreading it like wildfire, like you said, through these teens.
Mhm.
Again, I have a teenager, you have teenagers, you eventually will have teenagers. So I guess this is, I can remember in high school, my mom would be like, "Oh, it's just puppy love," but
Mhm.
it's still love.
Exactly.
It's still love. Puppy love is still love. So teaching our youth how to compartmentalize those emotions, how to react, how not to overreact, how to deal with that is very important. To
Absolutely.
have those skills, like to put those in the toolbox for when they do get older and they do get into their own serious relationships, then they
Absolutely.
know how to foster a healthy relationship, a lasting, long relationship.
And you really just hit on a key point I think we're going to address later on in this, so I won't go too deep on it, but the emotional intelligence that our children learn from us just by attending our groups and
Yeah.
our sessions, like understanding how their actions and their words impact other people
Right.
and to be able to process their emotions, understanding their feelings and how to act
Yeah.
appropriately according to that. So I
Yeah, for
think
sure.
that really does help.
So thank you for that. Now I know we can all use context clues and define and think about what teen dating violence is, but as a violence prevention specialist, Raven, can you actually define what teen dating violence looks like, how it may be similar or different from adult domestic violence, intimate partner violence? Can you just kind of talk about the definition, like what is teen dating violence?
Absolutely. So teen dating violence awareness is really about just spreading information about healthy, unhealthy, and abusive behaviors among teens. To answer the question, it is very similar to intimate partner violence and domestic violence. With a lot of the teen relationships, obviously there is not that domestic violence piece as they are not in home with their abusers, but a lot of the things are the same. They're going through verbal abuse, they're going through emotional abuse, mental abuse, sometimes physical and sexual abuse as well. So a lot of those things are the same. There are two main components that are really different. These things do happen with adults, but it's more so prevalent among the teenagers, and that is them using their social status and peer pressure among peers. So those types of things, how our teenage girls or our middle school girls will click up against other friends when they have a issue and drama between each other. That is one major difference. And then cyberbullying is a big thing that's way more common among the teenage group. That doesn't happen as often with adults. So for the most part, it is pretty much the same. All different forms of violence, a lot of emotional abuse and manipulation, all that is the same. However, the physical abuse and the deaths do not have to happen as common, but there are still teenagers who do succumb to domestic violence relationships.
Okay. So Hope, let me ask you this question. You work in the middle of high schools and in other places with youth. What are some of the most common forms of teen dating violence that you have encountered in your work?
So Raven, I, and Princess, we always talk to them. And when I'm in the Men and Strength Club, we always talk in the acronym of VIMPs, because verbal abuse is the top form of abuse that I see among teenagers and in the schools, middle and high school. And we see that trickle over into emotional abuse because it's how those words made someone feel. And then we go to mentally, that begins to get in their mind. And then sometimes physical abuse is something I see a lot, not as much in the relationships, but just among, friendships
Peers in
and their peers,
Mhm.
a lot of physical abuse. And then sexual abuse being not the least important, but the most underreported, or that I can see because I can't ever really see it. But Raven and I have been facilitating Aaron's Law and Gavin's Law, and there's not a session that we have that someone is not either talking about sexual abuse, their personal experience, or getting more clarifying questions, asking more clarifying questions from us. So I do definitely see, a lot of verbal abuse, cyberbullying, social media, being abusive on social media. But for the most part, it's definitely verbal. And a lot of them tell me, this is just how we get along. And I always hear Raven in my ear, what about the long-term effects of that?
Yeah, for sure.
They don't know how to think in long term yet. So I always will say, hey, although it's not bothering you now, some of these words we internalize, and later on it ends up coming out in different ways, especially with being physically abusive. So I let them go a notch further and think a little bit more about how they may see other forms of abuse as less harmful, but in the end, they're really not less harmful at all.
Yeah.
They usually actually turn into some of the ones that they think are more harmful.
Yeah. And real quick, just
Yeah.
because you mentioned that, I always use an example whenever we do our presentations or whenever we're in session talking to the kids about Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. I show them the circle. So there's this thing called the Teen Power and Control Wheel for any of our viewers who want to just get a quick glance at that. But you're going to see a big circle, and at the end, there's literally the words physical and sexual violence. And it has teen power and control in the middle, and all the things in the circle that you're going to see. Those are the smaller things that our teens are doing on a daily basis that contribute more and more to violence that they don't think about. And so these are I hate to say the word lesser forms of violence, because at the end of the day, violence is still harmful regardless. But these are the things that they seem to minimize as though, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And so these smaller things contribute more into the culture of violence. But I definitely agree with what Hope said. It's the verbal, emotional, and
Yeah.
digital violence for sure.
For sure.
So I like that. VIMPs, you said, verbal,
Yes, VIMPs.
emotional, mental, physical, and sexual.
I like that too. I ain't heard that before.
I think that, I think it's possible, very possible, as you explained that whole, like, that's kind of a ranking of kind of what you see
Mhm.
in the forms of teen dating violence. So parents take note of that, right? And then also, Raven, you mentioned that Teen Power and Control Wheel. That's another great resource, I think, for parents and anyone who works with teens to check out. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
What about, we always want to, kind of hear, like, is this stuff really happening? Like, what's the prevalence of it? So maybe Princess, can you share any recent statistics or maybe even trends related to teen dating violence that we should know about?
Absolutely. So, teen dating violence affects millions of young people more than we tend to think so, right? It includes VIMPs. So, verbal, emotional, mental, physical, sexual, harassment or stalking of any person between the age of 12 to 18.
Mhm.
So we have young children between the age of 12 years to 18 that's really experiencing this. We tend to think it's more in an adult form, but it's just as well as in youth form as well. 1 in 12 U.S. high school students experience physical and or sexual violence in a dating relationship. 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 10 boys experience physical and or sexual violence in their intimate relationships. Teen dating violence is more prevalent in same-sex teen relationships than in heterosexual teen intimate partner relationships.
Yes.
Now we respectfully, dealing with transgender, we don't look at the violence or the statistics in transgenders as well. I
Mhm.
think we overlook that too, or maybe we don't know how to, I don't scope it out or deal
Incorporate
with it.
that.
Incorporate that.
Intersectionality is very
Yes.
important. And I think even with those statistics that you mentioned, the fact that only 30% of teens even report that they are in a violent situation, that means
Yes.
that those numbers are way higher than
Higher.
what you just reported.
Yeah.
And I think, Hope, we've had a conversation, James as well. I think we had a conversation in the office before about that 1 in 10 teenage boys reporting sexual abuse. Because if you think about it, why would I report that I'm being sexually abused? What does that look like for me as a male? So like, I think that that's just a very important thing for parents to think about. The statistics you just read are very important, but just understanding how often this is not reported, because for whatever reason, teens are not feel comfortable speaking out about this. And from our experience, for the girls that we talked to and some of the guys, it's embarrassment. It's fear, it's the judgment that may come. Like, I'm just not going to talk about it, especially if I'm a guy. What I look like telling somebody else that I'm being abused,
And Raven, don't forget this week's conversation where we explained to the youth and the teenagers, hey, because you become accustomed to liking something or feeling that it's normal does not mean that it's not abusive.
Right,
So we
exactly.
still say that is abusive.
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless as if you say that's okay, that does not mean that it's not abusive.
Right.
So, transgender youth are especially at risk and report the highest rates of physical dating violence, 88.9%, psychological dating abuse, 58.8%, Like you all stated earlier, cyber dating abuse 56.3%, and sexual coercion 61.1%. 1 in 3 homicides in girls aged 11 through 18 are committed by an intimate partner.
Let's talk about sexual coercion real quick, y'all, because that's one that we see often and a lot of people don't think about. Just think about simply, there's a video that we show the students, also another resource for parents. It's on this website called don'tletyourself.org. It's a video on Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month that has a perfect example of what sexual coercion looks like in a relationship. So when teenagers are having conversation about engaging in sexual activity and throughout the situation or the conversation, there is a no somewhere, or maybe I want to, but I'm really uncomfortable. And then there's so much, just a lot of convincing until the person finally says yes and agrees to it. And when you say yes after, so many attempts and you've already heard a no, then that is sexual coercion. And a lot of times they don't think about that, and they think afterwards, like, I agreed to this, but I wasn't really happy with it. Now we have a dangerous situation where you may have a teenager who is ready to call rape, or, just very uncomfortable at this situation because they didn't really want to do it in the first place. So I think that was a very important statistic that you
That's
And like you
definitely-
said, it goes unreported, like you stated. So the numbers are probably a lot higher, like you stated previously, than what was reported. Because go ahead.
No, I was just saying don't leave out alcohol and drugs being the main way to really get into a lot of sexual coercion.
Yeah.
So impairment due to alcohol and drugs becomes easier for people to sexually coerce you. So I always say, be careful.
Yeah.
When you're in a relationship, that person does not own you.
Right.
Your body isn't their body.
Yeah.
Don't pay attention to the signs when people want to, let's have a drink, and then they finally start asking you about sex. Or let's get high, and now they want to talk about trying to do something that you were previously uncomfortable with.
Right.
So just knowing yourself and coming into a situation and communicating, stating what you're willing to do and not do. So this is a boundary for me. This is a hard boundary. We talk about hard boundaries and soft boundaries. So maybe I can be convinced, but this thing right here, I don't want to do it. So we always stress and tell the youth and the teenagers exactly how important it is to mean what you say and say what you mean.
And that's a very important point, because it's a very uncomfortable thought to think that, oh, my teen is indulging in illicit drugs or, recreational use of whatever the case may be. But it does happen. And that's how, like you said, sexual coercion, occurs, So
And I want to point out for parents that it's not your fault. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent for not knowing that your
It's
kids
true.
are engaged in these things, but it's just, for us, it's literally our job to understand and study the culture of violence and to study the small trends that contribute to it.
bring
And so
awareness.
we see firsthand, and also, creating a different space for these students inside our schools, creating a different space where they open up to us on maybe a deeper level sometimes to ask these questions, to become more comfortable. It is not the fault of any parent who's not aware of these things, but this is why it's so important to be a part of the conversation and spread the awareness, because it's easy for us to say, I know my child. I say that all day long, but there are still always going to be things and other influences out there that impact your child. And so I just think that that's very important to point out.
And I want to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying. A teen primary attachment figure becomes their peers once they get into that stage.
Yeah.
So we have to begin rebuilding that bond within your team to become more influential. So I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of you, because I thought that was a great point that you just made.
That was a really great point.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to be my child's friend.
Yeah.
But then you have to create more of a friendship bond.
A safe space.
A safe space
for your
Yeah.
child to open up and maybe want to tell you about some things and be in their inner circle as
sure.
well. When I was a teenager, I used to think, oh, this person's so close with their mom because I wasn't that close with mine. And then I understood why, because there was that line there, a fine line that she drew in the sand, and I also drew in the sand. So now with me having a teenager, I'm able to have, conversations that I previously wouldn't have had.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right, for sure.
All right, so I think when we think about like who might be listening to this podcast, you guys are hitting it right on the head. I think mostly we're gonna have parents and we're gonna have grandparents or other caregivers who are in charge of or who are there to care for our teenagers in our community. So I think you all have been answering this in your conversation as of recent, but two-part question. Like, what are some, just to kind of to single this out, like what are some other warning signs that parents or educators potentially can look for if they suspect teens might be involved in unhealthy or abusive relationships? But then on the flip side of that, and I think you guys talked about boundaries and creating safe space, but what are ways that parents or other adults in teens' lives can support and show and be great examples of what healthy relationships, setting boundaries around dating. So kind of talk about warning signs, but then also talk about how can we help to support the teens in our lives to move towards healthy relationships.
Okay. I'll start and I'll answer both. So some warning signs that I think are important to note is their behavior change. So if they just get into a relationship and suddenly they don't want to spend time around family like they used to, or spend time with friends, or they refrain from some of their activities that is like a favorite activity. This is something that they like to do, but they're not doing that. They're spending a lot of private time in their rooms on their phones. Um, the clothes that they wear, so like if they're dressed a certain way, covering up a certain way, if it's hot outside and they're wearing a hoodie in 90-degree weather type thing, you want to be able to look out for that. If you feel like they normally would wear certain hairstyles, but they're just trying to cover up their appearance, they really don't want to let you see them too often, or they don't want to get too close to you. They're just distant, and some of that behavior, a lot of our parents may be listening and say, well, that's typical teen behavior. A lot of them are going through different things, but you just really want to pay attention to some of those things around the dating scene. And for me, I think it is so important, and I always stress this when it comes to creating that safe space that we were just talking about for teens. Just creating a space or building a relationship with them where they feel comfortable coming to you with something. So regardless of, what it is they feel like they may be going through, if they feel like they're going to get in trouble or not, they still feel safe enough to where they know, even if I get grounded, like it's going to be okay for me to come to this person, because they may be disappointed, but regardless, they're going to be there for me. So I think that it's important to just create that space for them. And then I think that really changes the relationship dynamic between a lot of teens, because the girls are like, I just want to be able to talk to my mom. Sometimes I can't get a word out. I'm asking a question and she automatically is jumping all over the place and making these assumptions. And I'm not even there yet, but I'm curious about, maybe getting there. And I want to know what that looks like. So I think it's important for us to sometimes just educate ourselves, take a step back from that parenting hat, because you're always going to be a parent and that's your most important role. But also, like Hope said, you not necessarily be their friend, but like, again, build a safe space or build that relationship to where they want to come. They respect you enough to where they want to share it with you and not hide things from you. I think that's important.
Yeah,
Do y'all
sure.
think there are any warning signs that I missed that I didn't really touch on?
I feel like you covered every warning sign. And I think that a lot of those things definitely look like normal teenage behavior. But if your teenager used to, I'm just going to take one of the things you said and dissect it. If your teenager's a teenager, girl, and she would freely walk around you in her underclothes and now she won't, take it as a warning sign. Yes, it looks normal, but ask questions. All of these things open doors for communication, isolation especially. Know how to do family check-ins with your teen. Go to their door and ask questions. How was your day? What'd you do today? Want to know more about their relationship, ask questions about the relationship that they're in, or even if they are in one, because sometimes you may not even know your child is in a relationship. So I think just creating that safe space opens a lot of space for effective communication when it comes to recognizing warning signs.
Yeah, for sure. On average, girls start dating at 12 and a half and boys 13 and a half. So before they start dating, I would help them to decide rules for their relationship, discuss healthy relationship patterns. Like you were saying earlier, Raven, that some parents may brush off certain behavior patterns on they're just a teen. But if your teenager is having unexpected bouts of anger over little things that you ask them to do. So let's say you bought your daughter a dog, Hope or Raven, and she loves this little dog and she takes this dog out every day. And you're like, hey, did you take the dog out? Mom, but that's not like her. I think some parents would just brush off and say, oh, she's just a teenager.
Yeah.
Or she's having a bad day.
Overstimulated.
Yes. We were just talking about overstimulation this morning.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what it comes off across sometimes. And we had this conversation in club last week, Hope. When I was telling the girls, I said, regardless if anyone in here has been directly impacted by teen dating violence awareness or not, they have all been impacted by it because they have been in the hallway and interacted with someone who's having a bad day, who's dealing with it, and they're thinking like, what the heck is going on with her? But again, this is a really big unreported thing that we're talking about. So people aren't really talking about it, but you can feel it and you don't know what is happening. So that's exactly what you just explained.
I do this thing with my son called Circle of Safety, right? So it's where he'll be like, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. He'll be like, Circle of Safety activated. If that Circle of Safety is activated, I can't get upset about anything. So I feel like doing something like that with your teenager opens them up. Because again, their peers is more influential, not to sound redundant or reiterate what I'm saying, but peers have even when I was come on now, when we were younger, our peers,
you're telling
me.
Once you get to a certain age, absolutely.
It's almost like parents don't know anything and my friends know everything.
And then once you get to a certain age, also then our spouse is a little bit more, has more of an influence on us. So like it's constantly changing, and that's why it's so important.
And there's
we got
app.
So many different influences pulling them in.
And there's an app that I looked up. It's called LEAI that teenagers can download and ask them questions about teen dating if they don't feel comfortable. Some parents, coming to their parents, maybe, not because you're a bad mom, or maybe they just feel uncomfortable for whatever they're or maybe the safety is there. Or maybe they want to take their time. But I feel like that app, I actually looked up that app and I told my son about it, and they can ask questions about dating on the app, and it's called LEAI, and it's really a good app actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So good information for parents. But what about the schools? Schools, kids spend a lot of time in schools, and in the community for that matter. So how can, those of us who work with youth in schools, or even just the general community, how can we all play a role in raising awareness about teen dating violence, and prevention of teen dating violence? Like, what can you tell the general public about what we can do to help with this issue?
I think just the consistency across the board. I feel like if all of us have access to the same information and it's being reinforced at home, and then they go to school and it's being reinforced, and then they're with their peers and it's being reinforced because a parent has already impacted or influenced their child in some way. I feel like if we are all on the same page, and it starts with awareness, and we actually learn the small things that we can do, and we actually are actively practicing and contributing to influencing the teenagers in those ways, I feel like it can help. We offer, trainings for community members, for staff, where we will go in and talk about this information. And I just feel like the more people we have on board, the more everyone has the opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah, that's a definitely good point. I agree with you. If we're all on board together, because if you educate the parent, you educate the kid. So if we're educated, and we got to lead by example too now.
Yeah.
Because we can't say, well, baby, you got to be in a good relationship, but I'm in a healthy verbal relationship with my partner, and this is all you're saying. It literally defeats the purpose of like trying to promote healthy relationships. So we, as parents, not saying no one's doing this, but I'm just saying as parents, we have to lead by example.
Yes, we have to be the do as I do generation and not
Yes.
the do as I say and not as I
Yes,
do.
this is a different
Because
generation.
there
Yeah.
is that generation where they're like, do as I say and not as I do.
That's
So
gone.
like, I want
Ship
you
has
to do.
sailed.
I
That
have
ship
not.
has sailed.
I have not been able to get this together,
Yeah.
but I need you to get it together. And it's not
Mhm.
fair because it's like if me as an adult, I don't even have the tools to regulate my emotions
Right.
and to process through and communicate the way I need to, then how can I expect my child to do
Exactly.
so? How can I
Yes.
expect my teenager to do so? It's not fair. So we got to do it first
Yeah.
and then, influence them, empower them. I am a
Mhm.
big, that word empower in Wise Club is important to me
Yeah.
because that's the way to influence someone.
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on what the schools can be doing. So I think that, schools have math, science, social studies, but at the end of the day, every individual in that school is a human.
Yeah.
So we have to really look at the social side because what good is a perfect student and 3 years later she gets into a dating relationship that is violent
Yeah.
and she's dead? What
Yeah.
good is that? So I think for schools, they have to open their doors to more programs like the clubs that Hopeful Horizon has
Yeah.
facilitated in schools,
Mhm.
and make that an important thing, not
Yeah.
something that we just brush off to the side.
Yeah.
A mandated thing.
Yes, it
That's-
definitely should be mandated. And if
Mhm.
not mandated, at least have
Yeah.
the
man.
doors open for programs such as the
Yeah.
Most and Wise Club to come in
Yeah.
and give
Do
this
what we do.
information to
Yeah.
the kids. There hasn't been a school that I have not been in that they don't thank us. Thank you so much. They're
Yeah,
looking for
that's
you
true.
guys. They're asking for you guys. They want this information. They're eager for the information. So being that they don't make the curriculum and they don't decide what they want to
Yeah.
do in schools, the schools have to really look at the social emotional growth of a human and of a student and make that something that is just as equally as important as X plus Y equals Z.
Because they need it.
Yeah. I remember just what was it last week when we had a club and we were talking about some of the teens. They were talking about how they seen other teens beat other teens, or
But it was
sorry,
mostly
not
their
beating,
parents.
but getting mostly their
They all
parents.
said their
They
parents
all
at
said
some
their
point
parents.
have been in a
Yeah.
violent, physically
Yeah.
abusive relationship.
They did say
Every
that.
teenager in that room.
They did not once did not say that, but we did have some that said that they seen teen dating violence for themselves as well. So it's definitely being influenced by the parents. But like you were saying, to have more club, like to have it mandated in the school system, because growing up, I remember us having Dare. I remember us having. You remember Dare, girl?
Avid.
Yeah.
There was Avid in the schools. They still do FCA,
I'm sorry, I'm
Fellowship
sorry.
for Christian Athletes, so
Yeah, but they don't have nothing. I don't remember it growing up. I don't know. I don't
Mhm.
remember anything like this
No,
at all.
there was nothing.
And this is
Even
so
Strive to
important.
Excel was good. Strive to Excel was really great, but it still was not
They
like
have sex ed, but they don't sit down and break down. Well, how do you compartmentalize this? How do you watch out for red flags? How do you know this and that? Like I never, like I had to say it. I didn't realize that until I got older. But by then I had 2, 3 messed up relationships.
But that's the reality of it. You keeping it real, and that's the important part that we bring to this role is being authentic and being genuine and being relatable.
Yeah.
And that's why the kids listen to us, because
Yeah.
I always say to parents and other listeners, my role is never to tell these students what to do. We give them the information, we share the facts with them and the prevalence, and we empower them to make their own healthy decisions with that information.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So as we wrap up, thank you for all the great information that you all provided to us. I think that community members, schools, and especially parents of youth can take this information and utilize it in a way that's healthy for working with their kids and the teens that they work with. So one final question before we get out of here. What do you think? What is one key message or one takeaway from this conversation that you want parents to have who are listening to us today about how they can be proactive in helping their teens avoid dating violence?
I would like to share with all of the parents listening that work is very important. I understand how important money is, and I understand the financial aspects of life. But if you can, schedule time to spend with your teen. A lot of people, parents especially, see their child in the morning and they see their child at night. And there's really not much other times, or they don't have a lot of time set aside to actually spend with their teenager. We kind of get so caught up in the teenager. They're doing their own thing. They have their own friends. They're getting a job. They're driving, that we just kind of start passing them by and the days just go by. So the key message I have is to spend time with your children, because then those warning signs, they start flashing red hot if anything was to happen. So I'm going to say schedule time. I know that may sound crazy to have to schedule time, but schedule time with your children. And that's my piece on what I feel parents could do to help.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
for
I want to
sure.
add to that, and I think if you add like a fun activity or something fun within
Yeah.
that scheduled time, that makes them look forward to that time more, and just use that to your advantage. But my piece of advice would be to focus more on guiding your teens and not controlling them, because a lot of times we just know what's best for them, and we want to make sure they're healthy, and we want to make sure they're safe, and so we just tell them what to do to get there. But if we focus more on guiding them, using information to empower them to make their own choices, then they will actually be more able to listen. And so a small way that you can just think of, how do I guide them instead of just telling them what to do, use I feel statements. Think about the way you're going to respond before you respond. So just give yourself 10 seconds. If you're upset or you're angry about something, give yourself 10 seconds, take a deep breath, and just reword in your head how you want to respond to them. Because a lot of times we just want to control them because we feel like they're our responsibility, which they are, and we have to take care of them. But understand that if it comes off the wrong way, if it comes off with any slight hint of power and or control, they're going to end up doing what they want to do just because, they feel like at least I was able to make this choice for myself.
Yeah.
So if you don't take anything from me today, I just would love for you to take what I just said about guiding them instead of controlling them, because that will open the door for them to hear you a lot better.
And I agree with Hope and Raven for sure. Spending more time with them would definitely open up doors that you wouldn't even imagine. Just spending that quality time and, like you said, guiding them where they can have their own voice and they can feel like they have a sense of their own control. Because ultimately speaking, we are guiding them to be the adults, that we want them to be. And I really do think that helping them identify a trusted individual, because a lot of us, even some adults, we don't know how to identify green flags in trusted individuals, because sometimes red flags look green. I remember Hope and I was talking about that, so how some of these teenagers think that these red flags are green flags. So having trusted individuals, like trusted friends, I think would definitely help them to make really good decisions in their intimate partners.
Yeah.
Or finding an intimate partner.
Absolutely.
All right, so thank you, Raven, Hope, and Princess, for this most important conversation. Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month every February. The color of the month is orange for Teen Dating Violence Awareness. And so make sure that you, as an individual, if you're listening, figure out how you can support the teens that you work with, as Raven said earlier, not just in February, but all year long, right? They need our help, they need our support, and that's what we're here for. I want to also invite anyone to check out our website, www.hopefulhorizons.org. That's HOPEFULHORIZONS.org, to check out all of our services. We have lots of different services, and all of our services are free. So if you know anybody who could use any of our services, if you yourself could use our services, please reach out to us. All of our services, again, are free, confidential. Our 24/7 support line number is 843-770-1070. Reach out, give us a call. We look forward to the next podcast that we will air, and check us out on all the socials. We continue to keep everything that we have up to date there. So we just invite you to join our team, to join us in any way you can and support the causes. We look forward to the next podcast, and we'll talk to you later. Take care. Thank you.